What is up, guys? Welcome back to a video. So today we're going to be talking about journaling. Now, if you guys have seen my content, you know I am always talking about why it is so important to keep track of your trades, to journal your trades. And for a lot of you, this is kind of the missing piece you need to become profitable. So today we're going to be going through my journal over the last 2 weeks, and I'm going to be showing you how to correctly journal, how to apply everything. And last thing, if you guys do want this template, I did put it in my free Discord. So yeah, anyways. With that being said, starting off, what is the importance of journaling? Okay, so whatever strategy you trade, whether you trade continuations, whether you trade reversals, whether you trade support and resistance, trend lines, whatever you guys are trading, journaling is still going to be crucial. It doesn't matter the strategy you trade. If you guys have ever heard of, market experience or discretion, whatever strategy you are trading, there is going to be some level of market experience to get good at that strategy. Now, what do I mean by that? On a base level, what do you need to be profitable? Let's say you're trading a 1-to-1 risk to reward. You need to win a little bit more than half of the trades you are taking. Now, whenever you're starting to trade a strategy, are you going to be a professional at that strategy? No, you are not. Why? You don't have the experience and you haven't learned from your trades. You haven't learned from your mistakes and, even your wins, right? What I always talk about in my videos is all you need to do after you figure out a way of trading that makes sense to you is once you start, winning, all you have to do is replicate the wins and slowly weed out the losses over time. And the only way to do that is to collect data. Because now what can you do? You can reflect back on your trades. You can look back on all your losing trades and you can look back on your winning trades. And I promise you there is going to be similarities. Your losses will most likely look somewhat similar and your wins for the most part should look somewhat similar. And obviously, what do you have to replicate? More of the wins and you have to get rid of the losses. Now, with that being said, obviously does that mean you're going to win every single trade? No, but usually on most losing trades, there is something that you can spot that you can at least learn from. So starting off with an example, a really good example, we're going to be looking at the loss I took last Thursday. So I took a loss, right? I journaled it. I sent my screenshot in. And then what did I do? I wrote the reason for the loss. First thing, draw was flawed, okay? Marked out the picture right here, draw. This was the draw I targeted. It was not the best draw. Kind of a random low, a little bit protected low as well. Definitely, kind of pushing it, especially after this dump. And the second thing I wrote down, which is really important, price slowed down drastically after the entry, should have continued with momentum and speed, sign that DOL could be higher or a retrace was coming, okay? So as you can see, the time the trade was entered, we start slowing down a little bit here and ended up, boom, reversing. Now, why is that so important? When you have this data, the next time this type of setup comes up, the next time, price slows down, if you looked at this journal, right, we'll look at the example because it actually happened today. What actually happened today? So today, we'll see, price did what? Displaced very aggressively, retraced to a gap, but what was the similarity? If we look at this, what did price do after the confirmation? It slowed down. Here, price even slowed down way before we started wicking. We started, losing volume. And then boom, I saw this. I literally remember specifically that trade from, Thursday, what I got cooked on. And this was not even considered. I didn't even consider it because, hey, I knew I got burnt on this trade. I wrote down, I saw my journal that I got burnt on this trade. I'm not going to get burnt on the same trade twice. Right? But if you didn't write it down, if you didn't journal, you didn't actually remember it and you didn't reflect on it, there is a very big case that in real time, you will make the same mistake again. You will take the same loss again. Now, when I'm saying mistake, I'm not saying, you always have to be right, but I'm saying there's certain things that you can notice that you can conclude and slowly get better, right? Now, if we're looking at, something like a win, right? So, write down, okay. So if we're looking at right here, a win, I am still going to write down exactly, what happened. So textbook setup, in my opinion, looking at these time frames, let's see right here. So textbook setup, price displaces, retraces, and delivers to the draw. All the time frames are essentially bullish. We're going back to all-time high. Kind of my textbook setup, especially when we're moving aggressively. But what can you see? What did I write down? Hey, textbook setup, price ran off open, invalidating the bearish move, retraced. First entry was a loose reaction. And as you can see, first entry was a loose reaction, kind of fast, and I ended up manually trailing the break even, which did cause me to take, a couple point loss. So, oopsies, let's go back. I wrote that down, right? Rejecting the highs for a slight loss. Second entry was given and taken. Price moved aggressive, so was not able to enter across everything. Re-entry later for a second scalp to all-time high. So essentially, wrote down, the second entry as well. And kind of the conclusion made, hey, even though it was a very good setup, right, it was still a little bit riskier, and I acknowledge that. When I look back on this, it's something that helps me internalize, and next time setups come up, maybe I'm a little bit more cautious, maybe, I'm monitoring this, that. It is very, very still important. Okay, so we'll look at another example here. This was the Monday after, because I went a week without trading, so oopsies, let's see. So again, same, literally very similar setup to the Monday before, long back to all-time high. The first entry was kind of the same, right? Literally got break even. So honestly, the conclusion we can kind of add this. First entry was a bit too trigger happy. Honestly, what we can add now here, maybe I should not take these. But jokes aside, that is something I should write down. That is why I'm writing this down, because if I'm seeing that my data is piling up and these first type of entries are just not becoming worth, maybe it's a good decision to completely stop taking those type of entries. But what I wrote away, I did go break even instantly, right? In comparison to this trade when I didn't go break even instantly. So I manually went break even there. I took a slight loss. Here, I instantly went break even because I was like, I know what happened before. Not going to get cooked with that again, even though it's a slight loss. Sure, instantly went break even. And then re-entry was given right after we tapped the 5-minute gap with loose confirmation. Stop should have been slightly bigger in case we wanted to tap back into the gap. Good follow through, on point with a draw, reject after a draw. Overall, relatively happy with the execution. So essentially, right, was happy with the draw that I targeted. Okay, it was not all-time high, my bad, but it was, another high, obviously playing with the trend as I usually do. And then, oopsies, as you can see, both of those entries, second one after we tapped the gap, right? And that's kind of the conclusion I wrote down. Now, another example are days that you do not take a trade. Not every single day will you take a trade, but there are days when you might have been able to take a trade, you might have been able to take a win, but yet you don't. And that is an example on Wednesday. And I was pretty frustrated about Wednesday. That is why I journaled everything to make sure, I don't make the same mistake. So if we pull up Wednesday, we'll pull this up real quick. So here. So if we look what happened Wednesday, we absolutely ran. And what I had written down. So I went into the day bullish, wanting highs and all-time high on ES. If you look at ES, it was a bullish pair, and we had all-time high up here, right? That being said, I said, after this strong bearish displacement, which essentially was this candle right here, I said, hey, I got put off. High time frame was in a range. So if you kind of scale out, we see high time frame was in a little bit of a range, but I got put off, I hopped off, and it blinded me from the entry that was presented later. So I saw that, it kind of put me off, I hopped off, and then it blinded me from the entry that was actually presented later, which was off this close, a really clean setup in my opinion, a really textbook setup. And I didn't take it, right? Oopsies. I didn't take it, right? I didn't take it. It's something I should have taken, and that's what I wrote down. Hey, remember to always trust your data. Was fear warranted? Somewhat sure, but a clean setup, very similar to another long I took in the past, which I wrote down. I wrote down my picture. It was May 15th, right? Same thing, price retraced to bullish, 4-hour gap. We fell into a bit of a range, but then we broke out of the range, which would have been similar to kind of that hourly close, and I took it to the draw, right? Boom. So very similar setup from literally, 5 months back maybe, but that is something that I write down. That is something I want to write down. I want to remember this. So, moving forward, hey, it is something I understand. It is something I can actually apply. It is something that the next time that trade comes, I will not, hesitate, or maybe, I will let the data play out. Whatever, I wrote down, hey, the hesitation was somewhat warranted because, we were in the range, but that is what clouded me from the actual real entry that was presented later on, right? Another example. So yesterday, trade during Asia session, right? And what I wrote down is, hey, trade was taken during Asia session, usually not my main session, so I only took on one set of accounts. Trade was reasonable, invalidated the bearish gap, all-time high above. Need to be more confident in external sessions, especially when price is moving clean. Textbook setup, oopsies. Wait, okay, I zoomed out too much. But I wrote down, hey, I was a little bit not hesitative, but I was not fully trusting my abilities in that session. So I'm collecting data. I'm making sure that, hey, this is going to be valid to size on different sessions because, hey, when price is moving clean, it's moving clean. I think this trade was super clean. I think it was super good. Literally continuation to all-time high. Same thing as, again, most of these trades in the last 2 weeks, just longing. I'll be honest, the one trade I shorted didn't play out. Every single other long did end up playing out, which, you know, I guess we can make a conclusion at all-time high, kind of, hey, just long. But no, like genuinely, that is why it is so important to look back on this data, because I will become more and more confident over, you know, the last 2 weeks. You learn. Looking back on that, I learn and I improve. Imagine now you combine that months, right? Every single month you are going to be slightly improving. And there's always going to be something that you can write down. Even if you write down everything played out the way it should have, everything was perfect, blah, 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 write down why. Write down the reasoning why, the logic why, because that is what's going to be embedded into your brain. When you write down all the reasoning, you write down the confluences, not even from like a pattern standpoint, but from a logic standpoint, you know, putting these things together, this is why price did what it did, right? A lot of times people don't actually understand why whatever happened. They'll say, oh, no way, we edged this, we did this. Like, there's no way the market's out to get me. If you actually zoom out, you keep track of everything, you look back on your data, and you're honest with yourself. I'm always honest with myself when I journal. I write down what I'm feeling. I write down, hey, if I did something right, I did something wrong. I write it down because that is the way I'm actually going to improve. That is the way I'm going to let, you know, the data compound over time. I will get marginally better over time, right? And obviously it's not going to be exponential, but it's going to be consistent. I always say, you know, you want to improve 1% better every single day. You want to learn every single day. And that is the one thing you can do in trading. You are constantly learning. You are constantly a student of the market. Whenever you feel like you have it figured out, you will get humbled. You are going to learn every single day. I am going to continue learning every single day for the rest of my career. If I'm blatant, if I'm ignorant to what price is trying to tell me, that is when people take losses. When they become ignorant, right? Confirmation bias. You take a trade and, you know, because you're in the trade, now you feel like it has to play out. You start ignoring what's happening, you know, on the trades. Or maybe you take a loss and it's like, oh, it didn't play out, so I'm going to ignore why the loss happened. That is how that loss is going to happen 100 more times. Versus when you guys actually write it down, you're honest with yourself. You write down a good reason. You look back, right? When you're going into your market open, you're going into your session, maybe you glance at your journal. You glance at your winning trades, get a refresh. Okay, this is what the good trades look like. Glance at your losing trades, see what mistakes am I making? And now, once that same thing is presented, remember, we literally showed you on Friday, when the same thing is presented again, you will not take it because you literally remember looking at the loss that you took previously, looking at that screenshot, right? Same thing for the wins. Looking back on your wins, a lot of the wins will look similar, okay? And if you're looking at those wins right before your session and that setup presents itself, you're not going to hesitate. You're not going to double, you know, think it. No, you're going to execute it. And whether, you know, it wins or loses, whether it plays out, then you can collect your data, then you can write down your conclusion, then you can learn, you improve. The point is you're improving every single day. And this will help with your patience too. If you genuinely know that every single day you are slightly improving, even though the P&L might not be improving, it doesn't matter. If you know yourself as a trader, you are improving because you are listening to your data, you're writing this stuff down, you know that a couple months down the line, you know, maybe a year down the line, however long it takes, the time does not matter. The time is going to pass anyways. But whether you improve or whether you regress, whether you continue going down that loop, that bad loop, whether you're break even, whether you have bad psychology, whether you continue ignoring these things because you're trying to escape from your problems, nothing is going to change. But at least this way you know You are changing. You are improving. A year down the line, you will be further. It doesn't matter what that goal is, the money amount or this amount, it doesn't matter, but you will have improved. You will not have regressed, which a lot of people do. A lot of people will also get complacent, right? They're doing good. It'll get to their head. They'll think they're, too good, and then they'll fall back, take some stupid losses. They'll have a psych slip up, and they'll fall back in a bad loop, in a, negative feedback loop. That's what I like to call it. When you're doing bad things, you're, trading negatively, and you just continue beating yourself down. But when you keep everything, you keep all your data, and you're actually improving every single day, you're not looking forward to, trading, not all this stuff, but you're looking forward to improving. You're understanding, hey, I'm waiting for my trade, but when it comes and I take it, I will improve. I will become a better trader after this trade. When you get into that mindset, it is a lot easier to progress, and it is a lot easier to be patient, to not stress yourself out going into the day, to not stress yourself out, if you have to get this many trades or you have to make this amount of money. No, you understand you are improving, and you can see the improvement. You can look back on your data. You can see how it slowly gets better, and that is going to give you the confidence. It will also help the confidence issue as well. That is why it is so, so, so important, to be honest with yourself, to write everything down. Journal, hey, this is my wins. This is what I did right. This is what I did right. Boom, 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 boom. Losses, this is what I did wrong. Look back on them, before you trade. So, so important. But I know that yap was kind of all over the place. It wasn't really a structured video, but I hope you guys can kind of see why it is so important and the correct way to go about journaling this. And again, the whole goal is to improve. It doesn't matter the way you trade. It doesn't matter if you guys trade the complete opposite way of me. That does not matter. You can still learn and you can still improve. And that is the one universal thing about trading, is your own discretion, your own market experience. We're all looking at the same lines, right? Some people just see stuff differently, obviously, because that's their own, logic. That's their own ideas. There's no right and there's no wrong. There's just something that's backed by data, and there's something that's not backed by data, right? That is why you have to collect your data so that, over time, you improve. But yeah, enough with that yap. I hope you guys, like that video. I will catch you guys in the next one.